Hello again and welcome to our summer 2025 special edition of your u3a podcast. Now, many of you will know that in July and August each year, the reporters, myself, our producer, and in fact the whole team, we tend to take a break. And this year, we decided to do something different and give you a real treat. We call it Blast from the Past. We've delved into all 51 episodes that we've shared with you since 2020 and selected 6 little nuggets that we want to encourage you to revisit. 3 for July, and we'll do the other 3 in the August episode. This is Maggie West. Please keep me company for the next 30 minutes and let me take you down memory lane for some of you. And for those of you who didn't hear these the first time around, they're fascinating stories, all from our u3a members across the country. Well worth a listen. So here we go. Now, how many of us have the luxury of a free bus pass? I know I do. But do we make the most of that free travel?
Somebody had the audacity the other day to suggest that we went down to Portsmouth on the train. I said, we don't do that. We're a bus pass group.
Now, another question for many of you who may be interested in history and particularly the Roman period. The question is, why did they build that wall up north?
Not only did they come into northern England, in the 80s AD, they conquered just about all of Scotland.
And finally, for this episode, do you remember the swinging 60s? I know I do, and I loved it. One of the reasons was the exciting music scene, especially pirate radio. It changed everything.
And we used to work 2 weeks on, 1 week off. So I came off the ship with £75. And it's the richest I've ever felt, to be honest. And we had our own beer ration, cigarette ration, soft drinks ration. They even did our dry cleaning.
2022 marked a milestone for a remarkable group of travellers, the Bus Pass Group, from Havant u3a, who celebrated their 10th anniversary. Led by the then 95-year-old Ken Arkle, they've been making the most of their free travel passes with a sense of adventure, humour and community. Joanne Watson caught up with Ken to find out more about where they go, how it all works and why the views from the top deck are often best.
Havant is located on the coast just to the northeast of Portsmouth and directly north of Hayling Island. So we're in effect midway between Portsmouth and Chichester. And so we've got easy access to West Sussex, to South East Hants, to Hayling Island and the Isle of Wight. And that roughly is our territory. I always keep it within a sensible day's travel. I had mooted the idea that we could get a bit adventurous and go somewhere and stay overnight, but so far that hasn't happened.
How many of you are there in the group, Ken?
Well, there's about just over 20, but my big dread is that one day they all turn up. For practical purposes, there's anywhere between 9 and a dozen of us who are hardened regulars.
And do you take a sort of vote on where you go, or do you have a fairly set plan every year?
Oh, we're very democratic. I decide.
Now, I know that during COVID, you actually had virtual tours. So what were you doing there?
Well, I've got a book called Bus Pass Britain, and it's full of bus journeys that various people have done and have written an account of it. So I would look up some of these and follow them and do a little bit of research on the route and say, right, now we're leaving Ribchester over an old stone bridge and away on the right, you'll see the cathedral, that sort of thing. I've never been there in my life. We've done the journey from, for example, Newcastle to Berwick-on-Tweed. Down at the other end, we've gone from Plymouth to Torquay. Go wherever the imagination took me.
Are there many bus drivers that you recognise and they probably think, oh, blimey, it's the old bus passes are on today, you know?
No, they come in varying degrees. Some are extremely helpful. Some couldn't care less. We went on one down to Bracklesham Bay in West Sussex. it was a bit of a worry to me because I didn't know, I'd never been on that route. I didn't know how we would know when we reached the stop where we had to get out. I thought, well, the bus driver's bound to advise us. Oh, he said, I don't know about that. I said, don't you know the name of any of the stops? No, he said, no, and he couldn't care less. But we were fortunate in as much there was an elderly lady taking a great interest in the proceedings. And she said, don't worry. She said, when I get out, your stop will be the next one. So all went well. We had a good lunch and we went up onto the beach at Bracklesham Bay, and there in the distance was the Isle of Wight. The rollers were coming in and there was a little mini lifeboat station there. So it was an interesting trip.
I was looking on your website and you have certain recollections of previous tours.
Yes.
And I noticed there was one to Tangmere Aviation Museum that one of your members said they were very disappointed by the soggy sausage rolls.
That was me. They didn't call it a cafe or a restaurant. They called it the Naffy. And they were on the menu was giant sausage roll. Lovely. And of course, they microwaved it rather than a conventional oven. That was a very interesting trip because I used to be what in the Navy they called a telegraphist, a radio operator, and one of our other members was a radio operator in the RAF. So we had great fun playing with the Morse keys. But one of the wags called us the Meals on Wheels group. Before this, I don't think I ever used my bus pass. I think that's the same as some of our members. But now we are all hardened bus travellers. Somebody had the audacity the other day to suggest that we went down to Portsmouth on the train. I said, we don't do that. We're a bus pass group.
All your trips seem to be very well planned in advance. Have you not ever thought, oh, we'll just turn up at the bus station and go on a magical mystery tour, take the first bus that comes along? Actually,
we have a member who does just that. The trouble is, you see, I haven't bus station. There's an awful lot of routes go out of it. By the time we'd argued and decided which one to get on, they'd have gone.
So do you have a very modern bus fleet down in Havant? Are they a real pleasure to travel on?
The buses are on what they call the coastliner route, which runs from Portsmouth along to Littlehampton. They are quite good. They're double-deckers. On the other hand, some of the Solent buses are a bit of a bone shaker. When we go over to the Isle of Wight, there's a circular bus that goes from Ryde up through Shanklin, Sandown, Ventnor, and then back to Newport. We know that we've got to go up top and sit on the pavement side, because as you leave Shanklin, you climb up round to Bombchurch Down and you get these magnificent views over Sandown Bay. And equally, if we're going up to Midhurst from Chichester, we know we must sit up top near the front, because as you come up out of the urban area, a whole panorama of the South Downs opens up in front of you. Wonderful views. And the countryside from the top of the double-decker bus opens up a new horizon, because you can see over the hedges and see things that you wouldn't see in a car or a single-decker.
That was Ken Arkle talking to Joanne Watson and proving that life on the buses can be full of discovery and the occasional soggy sausage roll. So keep exploring and remember, take your bus pass. Now, let me remind you of John Sandyford from Tynesdale u3a. In our March 2023 episode, he whisked us back 2,000 years when the Romans decided to build a mighty wall across northern Britain. Why? Empire? Strategy? Maybe to keep things interesting? Let's dig into the story behind Hadrian's Wall, where history and determination meet stone and mortar. John spoke to our reporter, Nick Bailey.
Well, let's talk about the history and the very obvious question, why was it built?
Interesting. Of course, you really got to go back 50 years when the Romans first came into this part of northern England. And in fact, not only did they come into Northern England, in the 80s AD, they conquered just about all of Scotland. And then they ran out of steam because there was a little problem a little bit nearer to Rome, and troops had to be withdrawn. And so although the Romans had got to Inverness and defeated the Britons, it was necessary to withdraw. And this took place over a period from 87 AD right through to 105 AD, where in fact there was a gradual withdrawal from Scotland. With the withdrawal and less troops, there was more problems. We remember there's very little written down about all this, because in fact we were in the extreme northwest of the empire, and it meant that in fact people in Rome weren't very interested in what was going on unless there was something very dramatic taking place. So by 105 AD, we were getting to a border, and the Romans had a view of a border which was nowhere near as exact as we have today. But the border settled very close to where the wall is now in 105 AD. We know from various bits and pieces, and it's all bits and pieces, that in fact there was trouble on the wall in this period, and in fact a series of forts were built between Carlisle and Corbridge to cope with that. And one gets the broad impression that they didn't cope very well. Hadrian became emperor in about 217 AD, and his ideas were totally different. All emperors want to expand the empire up to Hadrian, and he said, we're quite big enough. Hadrian decided to come to Britain in 122 AD. We don't know how long he was here. He probably spent a lot of time in a place called Vindolanda, which is a fort and probably the most intensely dug fort in the world. And that was right in the middle of what became the wall. And he came and he issued instructions, and the wall, which would be 80 miles long, was to be built from Bowness on Solway to Wallsend on the Tyne, which is east of Newcastle. The interesting thing is, it was obviously drawn up before they actually realised the geography of the business. Because you get gates opening up on the tops of cliffs. So it was issued and it was started, and they used troops from 3 legions in Britain to build it.
How long did it take to build?
You can say it was only just about finished in 138 when Hadrian died, and the wall continued to be manned right through to 410 or thereabouts, and even longer in some places.
Just finally, John, the wall must mean a lot to you. Is it the sort of place that you visit every day?
Nearly. Nearly.
And do you have a favourite part of the wall?
I suppose the windsill on which the wall is based.
Well, this is something that hopefully that people will see when they come on the 10th of May. John Sandiford, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Thanks to John Sandiford for talking to Nick Bailey. His tale reminds us some walls aren't just fences, they're legends in stone. I hope you're enjoying the show. Have you thought about joining us as one of our guests? Do you have a story to tell, a learning experience you want to share with others? Whether it's a fascinating piece of history, a unique hobby, or a topic that's captured your imagination, you could feature in a future episode. Just tell us about it and we'll do the rest. We're eagerly waiting to hear from you. Contact us on communications@u3a.org.uk. communications@u3a.org.uk. And now back to the show. Now, here's our final blast from the past. Let's revisit this episode from June 2024, when we took a trip back to the swinging 60s, when pirate radio ruled the airwaves and changed British broadcasting forever. Our reporter Peter Clift sits down with Nick Bailey, one of the original voices of Radio Caroline. He began his broadcasting career at just 19 years old aboard a ship off the Isle of Man. Nick shares fascinating memories of life on the high seas and beyond. Stay with us. You won't want to miss this slice of radio history.
Now, I'd like to, if I may, just take you way back to the swinging 60s. You started off, indeed, on Radio Caroline.
I did, yes. I was 19 years old. This was in September 66, and I joined Radio Caroline South as a newsreader. And I was there only for a month before I was transferred to the North Ship. Now, let me explain. The South Ship was 3 miles off the coast of Felixstowe, and the North Ship was 3 miles off the coast of Ramsey in the Isle of Man. What had happened when Caroline started in 64, and this is the 60th anniversary year, it became so successful very quickly that they wanted to cover as much of the country as possible. Caroline South off the coast of Felixstowe covered London and maybe as far up to Birmingham and also Northern Europe. But it didn't cover a lot of the UK. So what they did, the original ship set sail. No one knew where it was going to lay anchor, but eventually it did lay anchor off the Isle of Man. And the Isle of Man was a perfect place, actually, because radio transmissions bounce across water so much better than across land. And funny enough, the Isle of Man has its own parliament called Tynwald, and they have a sort of national day, Tynwald Day, and ended up off the coast of Ramsey on Tynwald Day, which was particularly appropriate. And that's where they stayed until eventually it all came to a sticky end in 1968 when both ships towed away. Whereas the South Ship was exciting, of course, because one was broadcasting to millions of people. I actually preferred the North Ship because the North Ship was much bigger. On the South Ship, I had to share a cabin with several others. On the North Ship, I had my own cabin. The mess room was enormous, actually. On the North Ship, we had our own table tennis table. And I think we ate a lot better because both ships had a Dutch crew. But I remember the dining room on the South Ship was very, very small. On the North Ship, we had plenty of room to relax and expand and expound on all the things we were talking about at the time. But because we were in the Isle of Man, we had Manx kippers for breakfast every day. We cooked our own bread. There were bread ovens all around the deck. And we had our own chickens. So I don't think we ate the chickens, but certainly we had fresh eggs. It was just a very, very, very exciting time.
Well, it sounds almost luxurious, but there must have been some bad times on board ship, surely.
It could get very rough. That was the only bad times that I knew of. It became so bad at one stage, I remember, on the North Ship, that the captain pulled us out of our cabins at 2 o'clock in the morning and asked us to put life jackets on. It was that bad. Luckily, the storm passed and we didn't have to abandon ship. Luckily, I wasn't seasick, because I could be reading the news and I'd see sea one moment and sky the next. And I quite like rough weather. Conversely, we would swim off the side of the ship. I did that on the South Ship, and I particularly remember that off the Isle of Man, where the sea would be like a mill pond. And Tony Prince, who was one of my colleagues, would dive from the top deck. That would be his party trick. But we'd go swimming off the side. We'd take the lifeboat out and go fishing. It was luxurious, really, because I was working at the Mermaid Theatre in London, and it tripled my wage. You've got to remember this was 66, and I was getting on Caroline £25 a week, tax-free, and it was all found. And we used to work 2 weeks on, 1 week off. So I came off the ship with £75. And it's the richest I've ever felt, to be honest. And we had our own beer ration, cigarette ration, soft drinks ration. They even did our dry cleaning.
As a 19-year-old, obviously having a good time, Did you ever think that the pirates would have such a huge effect on British broadcasting that they did?
I was conscious that history was in the making, and to that end, I had a Kodak Instamatic, and I took lots and lots of photographs because I knew that this was history and it wasn't going to be repeated. I also borrowed a cine camera from my mother, took quite a few shots around the ship. I've got a shot of Tony Prince diving into the water, for instance, and I put the two together about 10 years ago and did some commentary on it. And I've used that when I've been doing presentations, particularly with P&O when I did music cruises for them. I think it was constantly in the news. I think the fact that we knew it was potentially going to come to an end, that exercised the public's mind. And we were known as pirates. And because we were at sea, it just became very exciting. I mean, I think that if we'd been allowed to come ashore, which was what we were pushing for, and become legal, I think all the glamour would have gone because we'd have become establishment. We weren't at sea anymore. That didn't happen. And as you probably know, when the 14th of August came, which was the date of the Marine Broadcasting Offences Act, Caroline continued very bravely, but it didn't work out.
So having been forced to close and to give up your job, you went to Australia. You went on to Hong Kong. And I know you've got very fond memories of Hong Kong, haven't you?
I have. I went to Australia because I knew I wouldn't get a job in the UK, and the person who employed me was Australian. So, and I spent my childhood in Australia. So I had 5 years working there in radio, but eventually ending up in Brisbane presenting a late night program. I have particular memories of Hong Kong, as you say. I first went there on the way back from Australia, and I just popped in, and I got a job. I think they were used to employing transient people. It was whilst I was there that I first became aware of the British Forces Broadcasting Service, because they used to use their programs, and I thought, this is a nice outfit. I love travel. So when I got back to the UK, I applied to BFBS, as they're known, and eventually got in, and I was sent to Gibraltar and Cologne and Berlin. I was also sent to Hong Kong to set up their English language station. They already had a Nepalese station. That was my second experience with the Hong Kong. My first child was born there. And then I was posted back to the UK on promotion, didn't like it at all, and so went back to Hong Kong working for the government station that I'd already worked for a few months in 1972, and stayed there for 7 years, where two further children were born. By that time, I'd moved into current affairs, and I did a current affairs show for 5 years, which was very exciting because of the handover to China of Hong Kong. But eventually, I think I got cold feet because I thought, come 97, freedom of speech could be ended. As it so happened, freedom of speech in Hong Kong lasted until about 2013, even slightly longer. I mean, it's not the case anymore. But I think also I was worried about my age because in 92, which is when I left, I was getting on for 45. And I thought if I stay till 97, I'll be 50. And if it all goes belly up, it's going to be very difficult to get a job.
So great times then in Hong Kong and Australia. Just before you go, could we just take you way back to the mid-1960s and you reading the news on Radio Caroline?
Good morning, this is Nick Bailey with the 8 o'clock news bulletin. The Isle of Man. Support continues to pour in from all over the world for the Isle of Man and their fight for freedom. Member nations of the Committee for Colonialism at the United Nations have pledged their support for the island. An unconfirmed report from New York quotes Senator Goldberg, the U.S. representative at the UN, as saying that he will support the island's case. Today, the Court of Tynwald will be meeting in the historical Parliament building in Douglas to consider a resolution calling for complete autonomy in the island's domestic affairs and censuring the Labour government in Westminster for their action in attempting to apply the Oppressive Marine Offences Bill to the Isle of Man against the wishes of the people. And now the rest of the news. America, the United States Commission on Civil Rights has proposed stronger laws to end white-only schools.
In case you've just tuned in, that was actually Nick Bailey reading the news on Radio Caroline way back in the 1960s. Nick, great to talk to you as ever. Thanks very much indeed.
Peter, it's been a pleasure.
A big thank you to Nick Bailey for sharing such vivid memories from the golden age of pirate radio, and to Peter Clift. It's been a fascinating look at a time that changed broadcasting forever. Well, our 30 minutes is up already, would you believe? And I don't know about you, but I certainly enjoyed listening to those articles again. Thanks to our guests for sharing their stories, and to our reporters, Peter Clift, Joanne Watson and Nick Bailey. An extra special thanks to Bob Wells. He's been instrumental in putting this special edition together, as well as, of course, being our editor and producer. So thank you again, Bob. I'm already looking forward to the episode in August when we have 3 more blasts from the past, handpicked especially for you. This is Maggie West saying bye-bye for now. Make sure you stay in the shade, you wear lots of sun cream, and maybe occasionally take an umbrella. I look forward to spending time with you again in August.